Well,
Hey!
that was a good movie.
That was a good movie. I had much more of an appreciation of... it's Queen, right?
Oh, no, I was talking about Beetlejuice.
Beetlejuice?
Yeah.
Oh, we're in a completely... Beetlejuice was a good movie, but I'm talking about Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh, I haven't seen Bohemian Rhapsody yet.
That's a good movie. You should watch that movie.
Anyways, welcome to The Random Onion, where we make lists of movie reviews
Yes.
and post pictures of our feet on the internet.
Hey, we weren't supposed to talk about that.
And today we are going to be reviewing the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy.
Yes, very, very topical, because the movie just came out not that long ago. Although we're probably kind of late considering,
Yeah, everyone has already put their reviews out about this movie. And
Well, those people have no life, so.
So, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, starring Chris Pratt as Star-Lord, Zoe Saldana as Gamora, Dave Bautista as Drax the Anus Destroyer, Vin Diesel as Groot, Bradley Cooper as Rocket, Lee Pace as Ronan the Accuser, Michael Rooker as Yondu, Karen Gillan as Nebula, Dijman Honosu as Korath, John C. Reilly as Roman Day, Glenn Close as... I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. And then there's Benicio del Toro as Tannelir Tivan, and also we get Josh Brolin in one of his first appearances as Thanos through voice acting and performance capture.
Yes. And it's definitely worse in this movie than it ends up being in Infinity War.
Anything to say about the cast?
No. I mean, I know a lot of people talk about Chris Pratt. A lot of people talk about Chris Pratt because before this, he wasn't really in a lot of stuff. He was in, like, The Office as a fat guy or something.
Yeah, he's kind of chubby.
Yeah, and this was the first role where he was, like, supposed to be an action hero, so I know there was a lot about
he did the
that,
Marvel Super Soldier program.
Yeah.
He's good in this movie. I like him in this movie.
Yeah. Actually, he's one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise I don't really have any much to say besides why in the world would you cast Vin Diesel to just say I am Groot repeatedly over and over again?
Don't even get me started.
That's an A-list, probably a very high-priced actor, but I mean they make a lot of money with these movies, so.
All right, so I mean I'm guessing most of the people listening to this have already seen the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I mean, like, how can you have not seen it and be huge fans of Marvel?
I think this was one of the first movies I ever saw in 3D at the theater. It was back in 2014 when it came out.
2014 was a good year for Marvel. You had this and The Winter Soldier, which were the two movies that really got Marvel back on track after Iron Man 3 and Thor 2 were just dog shit.
Iron Man 3 I remember at least, but Thor 2... that movie ejects itself from my memory every time I watch it.
Yeah,
I've watched it multiple times, and I still can't tell you what happens in it.
Anyways, this movie, the opening scene, Peter's mother dies, and he gets abducted by aliens.
Yeah, it's actually it's a very well done scene. You've got Peter, it's like, when I was watching it recently, I was like, you really can see from both ends how heartbreaking and how hard it is for both his mother and for him, considering he's watching his mom die and how hard that is for him to deal with.
Yeah.
And then the mom just wants to hold his hand one last time, but he can't do it because he's too freaked out. It's really heartbreaking.
Yeah,
it starts off on a really heartbreaking note.
And then we go through that scene and we transition to like the opening, like kind of the opening song with it, and where he's doing that little dance and singing into the freaking little creatures.
That whole opening scene is awesome.
I think both those scenes set the tone for this movie just perfectly.
Because like even before the music kicks on, it like tries to act like it's a super serious like space adventure movie, and then all of a sudden he just breaks out a Walkman and starts singing.
And then we get he gets in there and he steals the orb, which is like the MacGuffin that they're going after in this movie.
Yes. The MacGuffin. At this point, we don't know what it is. So.
Then Digimon Hunasu's Korath shows up and he's like, "Who are you?" He's like, "I'm Star-Lord." He goes, "Who?" He escapes from them, yada yada. He goes to Xandar. Then we meet Gamora for the first time.
Yes, and this is something that I really have to praise about this movie. So, Gamora at this point wants to, she's trying to get the orb, but she wants to get it in order to sell it to try and get away from Thanos, because her and Nebula are both daughters of Thanos that Thanos is sending to do his bidding, but she wants to get away. So she knows the orb is here. She's trying to get it from Quill. And this is something I really have to praise about this movie, is the fact that when they're fighting against each other, it's obvious that Gamora is the better fighter between the two, but...
he's very crafty.
He's very crafty, and I would describe it as scrappy, like to the point where she like gets him down on the ground, and he like sticks his rocket boot on her and launches her away.
Yeah, that was something I pointed out whenever my wife and I were watching the movie too, is that they do a really good job with that.
Yeah.
And then, like in the middle of the fight, you've got Groot and Rocket.
Oh, God.
They're just trying to catch Peter.
They're just trying to catch him.
And it's funny though, because if like you take like 5 seconds to just explain what's going on.
I like Groot. He's growing his branches, and he's trying to. I think he wraps around Gamora instead of Peter. And Rocket's like, no, not her.
I love when they introduce Groot too. He's drinking like out of the fountain.
Groot is a bit special. He's a special guy.
And that's why they got Vin Diesel to play him.
I love the shit out of Groot. I love him. But so at the in the fight with Peter and Gamora, and Groot's trying to capture him. Peter, I think it's right after he does the rocket boot thing. He gets up because he's trying to act all cool, and then Groot just immediately puts him in a bag.
But they have a short fight. Then they get arrested by the Nova Corps, and they go through kind of like this prison montage, which is supposed to be there to kind of get us more introduced and more comfortable with the characters. That's a really well done scene too. I really like that scene. And then we meet Drax, the Destroyer, and in the shower scene where Peter's talking to him, he's like, "Oh, when Ronan gets here, and he does the whole finger across the neck motion, and yes. Drax is like, "Why would I rub my finger on his neck?"
Because this is this is James Gunn's comedy at its best.
Yes.
in this entire trilogy. Because Drax is really freaking awesome in this first movie. Because he's obviously a threat to some people, but he's also a giant freaking idiot. Eventually, when they're trying to break out, because Rocket's whole thing is, all right, we're in this prison. There's no prison that's going to hold Rocket. Rocket's going to get him out of here. And he has this whole scheme that he starts up of okay, we're going to have to grab some... he sends Gamora to go grab this. He sends Quill to go grab a guy's freaking robotic leg. And then he talks about there's a power core up on the wall behind them. And it is very important that we get that last, because it's going to set off an alarm when you get it. And as he's explaining this, Groot is in the background getting it.
And Drax is just standing there watching him, too.
So they rip it off, and they have to... Now, all of a sudden, they have very little time. So they go grab all the stuff. They eventually end up in the center chamber where the guards were in this to escape. And Peter hands him the leg, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't need that." Was it funny?
Was he hopping around on one foot?
He's like, and Peter is like, "I had to freaking send him 30,000 credits for that leg."
And towards the end of this whole sequence, you also get to see just how crafty Peter Quill can be. Whenever he tells him to go all get on his ship, and he's got to go get his Walkman back, and they're like, "Screw it, we're going to leave him." And then they find out that the orb isn't in the bag, that he's taking it with him, and then he shows up and he beats somebody with it.
It's perfect setup for something that happens later in the movie. But it's also a perfect setup for something that happens later on in the series as well, at least as far as I want to complain about it. But but that's the thing, is his Walkman was stolen by this guard, and he gets it back by beating him with the orb. And then he's flying back to the ship because they can't leave because he has the orb. So it's the whole purpose of what they're trying to do, because they can sell it for a ridiculous amount of money.
And then Drax is like, he gets back on the ship, and Drax is like, he's all complimenting him and stuff. He's like, "What were you going to grab?" And he shows him the Walkman. He goes, "You imbecile."
You are an imbecile. See, this is Drax at his best. I freaking love Drax in this movie.
And then after this happens, they go to the Collector to try to sell the orb. But the Collector at this point already has the Reality Stone from Thor 2. Which is, it doesn't really show up in this movie. It's not really important, but he already has it.
Does he?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just going to have to, like I said, I don't remember what happens in that movie, so I'm just going to have to agree with you.
So he has the Reality Stone. You very quickly learn that the orb, inside the orb is the Power Stone. It's one of the Infinity Stones. This is actually a good movie, too, because it gives you a little bit more background on the Infinity Stones themselves.
Yeah.
Then
I have to say, because the one thing that they describe about the Power Stone is like there's this, they have like a flashback of this guy, this big towering guy with the Power Stone and the staff, and he like slams it into the ground and it destroys the entire planet. I just have to say, that's how powerful Captain Marvel is, that she took a fucking full-on face blast from the Power Stone in Endgame.
We'll get to that in our Endgame review.
But it didn't do shit to her, it just knocked her back.
And she was not in the movie, but for like 1 second after that.
No, she gets blasted off screen, just off the set. She's like, "You're gone." Everyone just kicked her out at that point.
So they go to nowhere. They meet the Collector. Drax gets really drunk.
Yes,
and calls in Ronan.
Because we haven't actually mentioned the bad guy at this point, besides the actor that plays him. So Ronan is... I honestly, the first time I watched this movie, I couldn't have told you who the fuck he was. But upon further viewing, I realized, okay, he's a Kree... was it?
He's a Kree fanatic.
Kree fanatic, yeah. And he wants to end the Nova Corps, like genocide the entire planet. That's his goal in the movie. He wants to genocide a planet.
Yeah, and he's not working for the Kree anymore, because he is in Captain Marvel, but we don't know that because Captain Marvel hasn't come out yet, technically. But yeah, I mean, the intro scene to Ronan is kind of brutal too, where he just smashes that dude's head with the hammer.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
Like, I remember at the time, people were complaining that Ronan was just kind of a nothing character. People didn't like him. But now, honestly, looking back on it with a lot of the crap we've gotten recently, Ronan's actually a pretty good villain.
Yeah, it's crazy because that's all we had to complain about back then, you know. And nowadays, it's just everything else.
Yes.
Where they meet the Collector was a place called Nowhere, which is a giant celestial head.
Yes. Which is really cool when you first see it.
Yeah. It's definitely one of the more... And that's another thing, though, because like the color usage and the cinematography of all three of these movies is real, real good.
Yeah.
And a lot of the concepts and ideas are in the first two movies are pretty interesting. Like the head, the Nowhere and what Nowhere is, and some of the other stuff that they do.
And the whole thing is it's like a mining colony. So they're stripping this celestial's head apart for resources to sell. And stuff.
Yeah. So Ronan shows up there, as shit has kind of hit the fan with the Collector, because one of the Collector's slaves decided to try to steal a stone and she blew up.
Yes, she blows up. She blows up at the end of the backstory, and this is specifically done to show that you blow up if you touch the stone.
Yes. Which is important later.
Yes.
So Ronan shows up. Ronan, through like a whole bunch of stuff with Nebula, Ronan gets the stone. Gamora ends up in space when Peter has to save her with his helmet, which would have been useful in the third movie. We'll get to that.
Yeah. I don't want to say we did mention Drax gets drunk. The reason why Ronan shows up here is because Drax gets drunk and calls Ronan to come get them. He calls Ronan and tells him where the Power Stone is because he's drunk and wants to beat him up.
But yeah, and just kind of like fast forward through some of these highlights. Nebula gets the stone for Gamora. We also got to talk about the Thanos cameo in here, because like the animation doesn't look that good, like because the character Thanos has not really been properly introduced yet. I mean, it's not terrible by any means, but he does have one of the coldest lines in the entire MCU in this movie when he's threatening Ronan with "I will bathe the starways in your blood." That is. But they also portray him as a lot more menacing in this movie than in the next few movies that he's in.
Yeah. This is honestly the one time I actually remember him being in a movie.
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you what other movies he's in besides Infinity War.
He's in Age of Ultron, where he does the "fine, I'll do it myself" cameo. And then he proceeds to send more of his lackeys to go do stuff.
Yeah.
But we'll get into Age of Ultron later, because that's going to be an interesting movie to review. I didn't like that movie.
I liked one scene in that movie a lot, but I'm pretty sure you know what scene I'm talking about. It's the one thing that everyone talks about from the movie being really good. The Hulkbuster. Yes,
that is a good scene from that movie. I forgot that happened in that movie. Where are we? Nebula takes the orb. Quill and Gamora get stuck into space. Quill contacts Yondu, who throughout this entire movie has been like coming after Quill, trying to get the orb from Quill.
Yeah, Yondu was the one who originally kidnapped him when he was a kid.
Yes.
Abducted him by aliens. And when he was abducted by aliens, it was by Yondu. And Yondu decided, instead of turning him into the person that hired them, he was going to keep him, and it's used like he's a small kid and can get into tight spaces that no one else can get into.
It's good for thieving.
The rest of the crew wanted to eat him, but Yondu stopped. He's held that over Quill. Like this is the thing I've really noticed watching these three movies, is that James Gunn if he really likes a joke, he beats it into.
Yes, he does. But. I mean, the whole thing with Yondu, though, is like, even from the moment whenever, Peter's on the ship and he's thinking about killing him, he can't watch himself do it. Like, you can tell that Yondu really, really cares about Peter.
Yeah.
And that's why when Peter, like, negotiates a truce, Yondu's like, hey, like, he's all happy, Their relationship is really well done in both the movies that Yondu is in.
As we get closer to the end of this movie, I'm going to talk about how freaking ridiculously powerful Yondu is. He is one of the most OP characters ever devised.
So they make a plan. They're going to go defend Xandar from Ronan and his lackeys, I guess. Yeah. And
so Ronan has the Power Stone. He's stuck it in his hammer.
Yes.
He's going to go to Xandar and destroy the Nova Corps. And the Ravagers have been hired to now try and stop him.
Yeah, and we get that cool suit montage where they're playing Cherry Bomb in the background.
That was pretty good. I like
that. So they all do that. And then Peter sends that message to the Nova Corps. He's like, I may be an asshole, but I'm not 100% a dick, or whatever he says.
Yes.
And
was that before or after? Because there's a scene where the Guardians are trying to save Peter from the Ravagers.
Yes, that's after they've already negotiated the truce.
Okay, yeah.
And they're like,
Well,
he's like, yeah, we're saving you.
You're gonna save me by pulling me up. You only gave him 5 seconds. Because that's Rocket Raccoon. And Drax doesn't know what's going on. He's just like, I'm just gonna do it.
And then he's like, whoa, it's okay. And Rocket's like, hey, Quill.
That's an amazing scene. Because it also introduces the gun that they're going to try and kill. What's his face with?
Ronan, yes.
Try and kill Ronan with this gun.
This movie is hilarious. So we get the whole space battle scene, and they break onto Ronan's ship, and Drax is like, he's talking to him. He's like, "You are my friend," and he looks at Gamora. "You green whore, you are my friend."
Yes, Drax. And Gamora's like, "Oh my God, shut up!"
And Nebula shows up, and Drax shoots her with a rocket launcher. He says, "Nobody does that to my friends."
Drax is a homie. He is always there for his friends.
And then there's that scene where they're like in the hallway, and Groot just impales a bunch of people and starts slamming them around the hallway.
There's this whole fucking huge fight scene, and they're beating up all these henchmen, and then these they finish them all off, and then these bunch of guys just start running down this hallway, and Groot just like freaking grows and stabs through all of them and smashes them around, fucking dead. Obviously they're already dead. And then he lets him go, he turns back to camera, and he just smiles.
And Peter's looking at him like, what?
That smile on Groot's face is he says, "I do good."
And then they go try to use... And then we get the Gamora versus Nebula fight, while Peter and the other guys are using that weapon that Rocket created to try and kill Ronan.
Yes.
And it straight up just doesn't work. Like,
yeah.
They hit him in the chest with it, and he gets back up, and then I think Rocket crashes a ship into him.
Yes, Rocket crashes a ship through the window into him, which is kind of like, that's plot armor that anyone survives that.
Yeah,
none of our heroes survived that because none of them technically should have. Ronan probably could have, but everyone else should probably be dead, especially Rocket.
Yeah, and then like the Ronan ship is like going down, it's going to crash, and you get one of the more heartwarming scenes of the movie with Groot, the whole "We Are Groot" thing.
Yeah. And we did kind of pass over the Nova Corps creating their giant shield with their ships.
Yeah, what was that?
I mean, it's kind of a cool idea that they like combine all their ships together to make a big shield, but to like block the ship, it's just kind of an odd use of it. But
right,
I mean, it kind of works until Ronan uses the power stone.
Until it doesn't. So what I don't get is like you can create these shields, with like the sides of your ships. Why not like create a device to put these shields on the tips of your ships?
It's a good question because the ships are all poking. It's a pokey attack. They're poking the ship. They're poking
a bunch of pokey boys.
Also, I feel like Ronan's ship is like almost modeled after like a double helix.
Yeah,
DNA strand. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, like I said, the visuals in these movies are great.
Yeah, they're really good. I really like them. The ships are unique and very well developed for like what this movie is.
Yeah, and also Yondu ends up like he crashes and he gets surrounded by the Sicarian soldiers.
Yes,
and
he just whistles and they all die.
Yeah.
And this is like, I want to talk about the beginning because it gets worse in the second movie as far as how powerful Yondu actually is.
Yeah.
But could Yondu have killed Thanos? I feel like he could have.
I feel like Thanos is a lot smarter than Yondu. Thanos probably would have found a way around it, honestly.
I mean, potentially. He would have, if he didn't have the power gauntlet, like if it was just Thanos by himself.
I still feel like Thanos would have thought of something. Mm-hmm. But that wouldn't have stopped Yondu from killing a good portion of his people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, seriously, just run that damn arrow. Like, that arrow against a mindless mob of drone soldiers, which is what you get in a lot of these war or big battle scenes
Yeah.
in these movies. That just fucking mops house with everything. It just goes.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, but still, it's a well done scene too because you're not expecting it at all in the first movie.
It's like throughout this entire movie, he has been threatening to use this arrow.
Yeah,
and then suddenly use it, and it's like, oh my god.
Yeah, they're gone.
Like, not only does it kill people, but it also destroys ships. It can punch straight through ships and cause them to explode.
Yeah, and also, we gotta talk about how Drax kills Korath by ripping that thing out the side of his head.
Yes.
What? Why?
I mean, he saw a thing. Let's rip
it
out. Let's see what happens.
And then they crash the. I don't forget what the name of that ship is called that Ronan has. And so Groot's dead. Rocket's freaking out that Groot's dead. They think it's kind of over, and then you see Ronan come out of the smoke, which that's like a well done scene because everyone's like, "Oh gosh, here we go!" And then Peter, not knowing what to do, what are you doing? Oh, dance off, bro!
Because yes, as the smoke clears and Ronan is trying to make his big villain speech right before he destroys the planet, Peter just starts fucking dancing. To the song that was playing in the background a minute ago.
my favorite part of that whole sequence, though, is him trying to like get Gamora to do it with him, and she's just no.
And he's like, "Okay, bring it back." It's such a Peter Quill thing to do. We've known his character throughout this entire movie. It is such a thing he would do.
And that's another thing. I mean, characters in these movies are very, very, for the most part, consistent.
Yes.
And then they use that big gun again. They shoot instead of shooting Ronan, they shoot the stone, and the stone falls, and Peter catches it.
Yes. So yeah, Peter jumps up and just barely catches it in front of Ronan, and his eyes go. He goes purple. He's like about to explode.
Yeah,
like the slave lady did from earlier.
And then they use the power of friendship.
Yes, everyone, all of them start slowly touching him.
That sounds almost as bad as what Palpatine wanted to do to Rey. You guys won't understand that joke yet, but you will.
So they all start working. They all start holding hands, except for Drax that walks up and just like grabs someone. I think he grabs Gamora's back.
He touches Peter's shoulder because Peter's in the middle, and that's like Gamora. And then Rocket like grabs somebody's finger, I think.
Yeah. And they all together can hold the power of the Power Stone, and Quill uses it to end Ronan at this point.
Yeah.
And that's the main plot of the movie.
Yeah.
There was actually a scene from earlier that I wanted to talk about, but I didn't think about it until just now. It was right before they made this plan to do this planet, to do this whole thing to protect the planet, where they're in Quill's ship, all in like a cargo hold, and they're talking about their plan and Rocket keeps saying how stupid it is, and then they all eventually start standing up and saying that they're with the plan in this, and then Rocket stands up and says, "All right, I'm standing too. Here we are, a bunch of idiots standing in a circle."
Rocket is... Man, I wish we'd have gotten more of Rocket. I wish we'd have gotten more of Rocket's backstory in this movie than, like, that being, like, the main plot of the third movie, almost.
That is kind of a really strange thing in the third movie, as how they focus on Rocket. It's the third movie, it's after a whole bunch of shit has happened, and now they're, like, deciding to give us his backstory. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, we'll get to that.
Alright, so Guardians of the Galaxy movie came out in 2014. You want to go over our scores for this movie real quick?
Yeah.
Alright, so for those of you who don't know, we score these movies on 9 different categories on a scale of 1 to 100. And after we are done with these categories, we average out the scores, and that is the final score. And then we average our scores together, and that is the movie's final score for the official list for the show. Now, we've scored movies before. This is probably going to be the first video that comes out, so we're not going to spoil where these movies land. quite yet. I'm sure we'll put something in the video that as they come out, like how the movies have done compared to the other ones. But we're not gonna really talk about the scores for other movies because we've already graded several of these Star Wars movies, and those videos are going to come out probably way later.
Yeah, they'll come out eventually. All right. So of these points that we score every movie on, the first one we always do is plot.
Now, do you want to explain the difference between plot and story for them?
So, I almost have to bring up the text messages I sent you that day because I can never remember. I always feel like plot and story structure needs to be separate because the plot of the movie is the basic overall story of like the basic overall of what is the main point of the story of it and of what the movie or book or whatever it is. The story structure is how that story is told. And the one that I would bring up all the time to explain this is Pacific Rim. And that Pacific Rim has a batshit insane plot, but a really good story to tell that batshit insane plot. Which is why I always feel like plot and story structure need to be separate, but they generally do tend to be close together.
Yeah, I have it listed as the plot is the how, when, and why, and the story is the who, what, and where.
Yes, that's right. That's what. So, plot.
Honestly, I gave this movie a 90 for plot.
90?
Yeah, and that's a very high score. Keep in mind, the average is 50.
Yes. But yeah, the basics of it is we start all of our scoring at 50. 50 is average. Of 0 to 100, 50, or 1 to 100, 50 is an average. 70 is not average, so a 7 out of 10 is not an average movie. That is a above average movie. Average is just like, the way I would describe average is I have nothing good or bad to say about it. It's just,
it's very meh.
Yes.
For me, that kind of ranges from like a 50 to kind of a 60 scale. Is going to be kind of where it falls average for me, and we'll get into that, especially when we get into our reviews for like Wakanda Forever and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert: that movie is very average.
It's not average for me. Because this is another thing is that I tend to score lower in most cases. But for plot in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, I gave it a 72.
Nice.
So this is if this is the first time it ever comes out, people might think that I give higher scores than I give really low scores a lot. All right, for story structure.
Story structure, I also gave it a 90.
All right. Story structure for me came to an 82. I feel like the story was very well told. The plot is a little crazy. It's a little bit. It's a good plot.
It's very James Gunn, and that's what I like. But I like the weirdness in this movie.
Yeah.
That was a big thing for me with this movie. Is I like that he really kind of leaned into the weirdness. Now he does go a little too far in the third one, but we'll get to that.
Well, we'll see. Well, yeah, I think he goes too far in the second one, but
I can kind of see where you're coming from for that.
All right, next up is going to be characters.
The characters are good in this movie. They're fun. I gave characters an 80. And I know this has been said like 1,000 times because we don't get enough of the villain, and that's always going to be a big thing with characters for me. Is we don't get enough of the villain in this movie.
Yeah, that's true. We don't get enough of the villain. He is a little generic, but that's really
he's played well. He has acted very well.
Yeah.
But he's not in the movie enough, and he is like you nailed it. He's very generic.
Yeah, he's very generic. He just wants to commit genocide. That's his
typical bad guy.
You don't really see a reason as to why he wants to commit genocide. He just wants to.
He's like blue space Hitler.
Yeah. So characters for me, I actually gave it a higher score. I gave it 85.
Oh wow!
I really think that Ronan aside, almost every other character in this movie is very strong.
Yes,
they are very consistent throughout the movie, and
they're very consistent throughout the first two movies, I think.
Yeah.
I don't really. The third one, like I said, we'll get into that. It's kind of all over the place.
All right. Next up is the world building.
This is a very high score for me. I gave it a 96.
96. Oh,
Yeah.
high score.
I think it builds the world very, very well, especially with the Thanos cameo and the Collector cameo and all of that stuff. You get a big backstory on the Infinity Stones, which is very important to the MCU moving forward.
Yes. And then you have, like, even the Celestial head, so we now know that Celestials are a thing
Yes.
in this universe. There is a lot of world building thing. I really wish they didn't just throw all of it out the fucking window. But
Yeah.
I ended up giving world building a 74. It's a very good score for me. But
Yeah.
all right. Next up is the acting.
Acting, I mean, like I said earlier, all these characters are very well acted. Chris Pratt is hilarious. Drax is hilarious. They do what they set out to do with it. I gave acting a 95.
95, yes. Acting is very well done in this. There's not really any cases of overacting. Everyone does a really good job with this. So I gave acting an 82. All right. Next up is the special effects.
Special effects are good in this movie. This is before Marvel CGI budget went down the drain.
Yeah. This is it looks really good for the most part. Like I can't really point out any scene that is janky or looks wonky in any way. And Rocket is a completely CG character. Groot's a completely CG character.
Yeah.
And I believe both of them are on the screen the entire time.
Yeah, I gave special effects a 90.
90? Alright, I gave special effects an 80. Alright, next up is score. Music.
This is actually, honestly, probably one of the best things about this movie is the score.
Yes.
I rated the score very, very high. I gave it a 97. A lot of usage of classic songs.
Yes.
Which is something that actually is like pretty consistent throughout the entire series.
For the most part, a little bit less than the third one.
Yeah, well, that's because they moved to the 90s.
Yeah. So, for music, I really do like how they made music like an integral part of Peter's character. And it's very important for him. It's very important because the whole reason he likes the music he does is because his mom got him into it.
Yeah.
And his mom died, and it became a very integral part of who he is. So I really like that. I gave music an 87.
And then we have a cinematography.
Yes.
And this is another thing that I really liked. James Gunn really settles into the weirdness in this movie. And, yeah, I enjoyed it. I gave it an 83.
83? Yes. Cinematography, it's, like I said, there's a lot of great shots in this movie. Nothing looks janky or wonky in any way. I guess I don't really have a whole lot to super praise about it. It's just it all looks good. So I gave cinematography a 72. All right, last up, and this is probably the most important. It is the most important score of the whole thing because this is fun. This is basically how much did either one of us actually enjoy watching the movie.
This is one of my favorite MCU movies, like hands down one of the best. It's definitely in the top 5. And, you know, not even necessarily probably from, like, I think on a score standpoint, it's probably going to be like top 3. But as far as like one of my favorites goes, there's a lot of MCU movies that I really, really like, so it's probably top 5 there.
Yeah.
But this is a very, very good movie. I really enjoyed this movie, and I gave it a 98 for fun.
98?
Yeah.
You did very like the movie.
Yeah, I really, really like this movie.
See, for me too, I really enjoy this movie too. This movie is one that I absolutely enjoy going back to watch every now and then. Like the first one more so than any of the other ones following.
Right.
I would absolutely enjoy going back and watching the first one. Watching the second one kind of as a requirement to complete a big portion of the story. But the first one I gave a 85 for fun.
All right. And so that brings us to our final scores. My final score averaged out to about a 91. What was yours?
My average score added up to 79.9.
So that brings our total score for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 to an 85.45.
85.45. Which, for anyone who cares about it, that would put, out of a scale of 1 to 10, that would put it an 8.5 out of 10.
And without spoiling our list so far, that actually puts this movie in second place.
Second place now.
Yeah. But we've only reviewed 8 movies so far, including this one. So, without spoiling anything.
Is it an A or a B?
That is an A.
That is an A.
Yeah. So we do our grading on a kind of a 15-point scale. And I know we said average is like 50, but as far as like grading goes, for an A, it's 100 to 85. For a B, it's 84 to 70. For a C, is 70 to 55. A D is 54 to 40. And an F is 40 to 0.
A lot of movies I score get Fs. I'm serious. I have, just on this screen I have right here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got like, let's see, no. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 6 movies scored. And 3 of them are Fs.
So
50% are Fs.
I've reviewed 84 movies, and I've probably given maybe 7 or 8 Fs. Things tend to average like C or D for me.
Yeah. So, do we have any final things to say about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1?
It's a good movie. I'd recommend it.
Yeah, I highly recommend watching this movie. Even if you have no interest in any of the rest of the Marvel universe, you should watch this movie at least.
Yeah.
Because it's a great standalone movie. You don't really have to know too much about the rest of Marvel to understand what's happening in this movie.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And yeah, that's all we have for this recording. Please like, subscribe, and look for our OnlyFans account with the pictures of our feet.
Be Feet Finder.